Welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you for showing up. This next interview, we are talking with the Michael Bach. So, Michael, thank you so much for showing up. Again, saying yes when I just throw it out there in this context of like, I have this idea. Do you want to talk about it with me? So, if you would, give us a little tour of you, what it is you do, where you stand, all these sorts of things.
It is my absolute pleasure, Nadi. I do anything that Nadi Fantastic asks me to. It is the way of the world, and I think everyone should just do what Nadi asks of them. Let's see. I'm Michael Bach. My pronouns are he, him, his. I have been working professionally in inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility for 17 years. I lead CCDI Consulting. I have been working not professionally, that's not professionally, unprofessionally. On my volunteer world, I've been working in the LGBTQ2+ space for over 30 years. I live in Toronto with my lovely husband and our 2 dogs, and I'm just happy to be part of this conversation.
Amazing. So what I wanted to talk to you about, because you and I have talked, you know, through Instagram chats and just something happens in the world, is I want to talk to you about anger. And I think because anger is naturally, it's a human instinct that we want to avoid, you know, and especially when you come, from my perspective anyway, when you come from an environment that is a little light on oppression and pretty light on discrimination, it's easier to avoid anger than it is when you are raised with discrimination and oppression right in front of you. And what I'm seeing is allyship has taken a really comfortable pathway that passivity is allyship. And it's what it's understood to be, where I feel that rage isn't bad and getting pissed off about shit that's going on out here isn't bad. So what's your experience around kind of things happening in the world and just it pulling anger out of you?
Yeah, well, if I think back to my sort of history on all of this, so I started out very much as a social justice warrior, late 1980s, fighting the good fight. You know, I was very much part of that ACT UP kind of queer culture of trying to create more inclusion. And then at some point I realized that I wasn't actually making progress. And long story, but I eventually got to be at the table. I got to be in the room where it happened. I've been listening to Hamilton a lot. And I found that I had to create an environment that was more comfortable for people who are from the majority, who don't experience marginalization, in order to get them to listen to me. Yeah. And I still believe that. I still believe we can have these conversations, but they can be respectful. But recently, something happened that really got me pissed off. So this organization, they're an LGBTQ+ youth group up in North Bay, Ontario. And there's an article on CBC about it. They were going to they support youth. Kids, so I think 12 to 19 or 14 to 19, they were going to put on their own drag show just to express themselves. And apparently some people on social media got fixated on this. They started getting death threats, and there was a whole bunch of issues around safety. And I just got really mad. And this is something that happens. I do get angry about these
We're humans,
because I'm human, and I don't think it's wrong to get mad. And I'm really pissed that these people felt it was their responsibility, it was their right, it was their place to stick their nose into this tiny little group up in Northern Ontario. And that is just trying to create a safe space for kids to express themselves.
Yeah.
And you know, not to bias and stereotype, but it was a bunch of Americans. And I think there's a whole initiative going on right now on social media around trying to deflect away from gun control and gun violence in that country. And I got really pissed. So I started posting things on social media and really trying to get people to engage and to participate. And I was saying, share this post. And I wrote an article and I posted it on LinkedIn. And the title of the article is "Inclusion Means We Need to Take Back the Narrative." Because I really think when you look at the numbers, the people who are these, social media warriors, who's the moral majority, are very much the minority. They are not the majority.
Yeah.
And we need to take back the narrative of them. But I wrote this article and I said, share this article. We need to spread the news. We need to create this massive global sense of inclusion. And I looked at the numbers today. I have, not to brag, but it's pretty big. I have 11,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
This article got 4,600 impressions, 136 views, 6 people shared it. And I don't, this isn't about my posts.
No.
It's about
why do you think so
the,
few?
I don't know.
Okay.
I do know. Well, I do know. I have a perspective. And that is because I think people see allyship in a very passive way. I put up a pride flag for June. And I would say that this is not just about allyship for LGBTQ+ folks. It's allyship for people of color. It's allyship for Indigenous people. It's any marginalized group, that we feel like it's a passive thing. People feel like it's okay. All I have to do is say, oh, Black Lives Matter. No, that's not enough. And but I think generally speaking that people just look at this in a very passive way.
Yeah, I get this. And what came through for me there was a sense of that allyship has to equal kindness. And if it doesn't come in a container of kindness, then it's too scary. Back away.
Absolutely.
And that's pushing into this space of authentic allyship. Allies have to be willing to take a risk. As we know, and as we'll talk about throughout this entire workshop, is this risk factor has to come into play. But in order to get to the risk factor, you've got to process what's making you feel uncomfortable about taking the risk. And I think it's holding back allyship. And like you said previously, we as facilitators and leaders in this work over decades, all the shoulders that I stand on too, have had to create containers of kindness in order to be heard. Yeah. So when shit goes down that we are pissed about, it's really easy for allies to be like, oh, no, I don't like that. No. I'm going to put another sticker on my car.
Yeah, but that's not, when I think about these haters on social media, the so-called moral majority, and they are not moral and not a majority, as we've seen by the January 6th committee hearings.
Yes.
That they're not concerned about being kind in their aggressive nature towards us. There are people that are calling for the death of all LGBTQ+ people. My husband was scrolling through TikTok or Instagram last night and came across a speech, and this person was calling for our deaths. Should we hug it out? Is that what we should do?
Right?
No thanks. I'm going to protect my life, and I'm going to protect the lives of my queer cousins and brothers and sisters and family. And it's okay to get uncomfortable. We need people to get uncomfortable. Yeah. We need people to get angry and be offended. Like, I use this statistic all the time. There are 71 countries where it's illegal to be gay or lesbian. And people are always shocked. Oh my gosh, I did not realize, and how horrible. Right, but are you going to go there? Are you going to take a trip to Jamaica or St. Lucia or Barbados or Nigeria or Chad or Comoros or any one of those countries? And I can't list off all 71 of them, but what are you doing about it? If people said we are no longer going to Jamaica, great travel destination for North America, then we're not going to Jamaica because of this law. Mm-hmm. Because of this cultural norm, you think Jamaica might reconsider? They probably would.
There's more potential of it.
There's more potential of it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but if you do nothing, nothing happens.
ChickfilA's a great example of that. Actually, ChickfilA is a pretty great example of that. So in the States, it's
What's
like
Chick-fil-A?
no, anybody from America, I might be saying it wrong, but it's the fast food chain in the States.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A.
Is that Chick-fil-A? Okay, so I'm dyslexic. I'm a mix words up, but
Okay.
it's a bit of a mini example of that though, because they are so, I'm just going to say anti-gay, but there's more rhetoric we could use around it. It's so anti-gay and boycotted and by, you know, LGBTQS plus community, but where's the allyship boycotting? Like, are you an ally who's also boycotting this establishment and speaking up as to why, right? Taking a risk, getting uncomfortable inside of the narrative. And that's what, like, I mean, the point of this workshop, as short and punchy as it is to like not just talk about the problem, but to talk about the solutions, if there are any, or to offer some sort of insight of the lived experience for this, is particularly for gender discrimination, because trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming folks are in danger.
Yes.
And that's the big narrative that I want to run by. So Rage Against the Machine is back on tour. And if you're not a Rage fan, I get it. Not everybody's a Rage fan. It's cool. But they have a track called Freedom. And one of the things he says in Freedom is rage is a gift. And he whispers it amongst all these lyrics, that rage is a gift. And I posted this on my LinkedIn, and one of the commenters had said, if only we could swap rage for love. To which, right? To which
I get it.
Yeah, totally. To which I replied that my rage is love. My rage is love for myself. My rage is love for the people experiencing discrimination and oppression. And my rage is a love for a future that I see where allies aren't just watching people get hurt. And this vision that I see for it. And the person never responded to my comment there, but that's, for me, when it comes down to rage, that's what I feel about it. If you are not experiencing the discrimination, you can't understand, obviously, what it feels like and how that rage is really coming from a place of love. I will fight for myself. I will fight for my son, who, as everyone knows inside the workshop by now, was discriminated against on public transit a few weeks ago. At 19 years old, held in a situation where the bus driver would not let him board a bus because the name on the ticket was a boy name and the person standing in front of him didn't look like a boy, is what he'd said.
Right.
So my rage in that situation is love for my son, in that identification.
And it's appropriate.
Yes.
And it's justified and it's acceptable. And I think people should get a little more pissed off.
And that's what I think. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to, you mentioned the Chick-fil-A example, which, you know, they're an interesting organization, but I think about the Sultan of Brunei, which is somewhere, I don't know where Brunei is, but he's a Sultan. And he decided to reinstate the death penalty for LGBTQ plus people. And it caused global outrage. And the Sultan of Brunei happens to own a series of luxury hotels around the world. And so there was a boycott by people like George Clooney, who said, we're not going to come to your hotels. And it was very public. And in fact, the Financial Times of London actually canceled an event at the hotel in London because of it. And the result was that the Sultan pulled back on the death penalty. Still legal, but at least we're not going to die. But life in prison, that seems better. And I think this is the problem, that they got us to the point of saying, okay, no death penalty, but how about no law? How about let's create an inclusive culture where LGBTQ plus people can exist? And we stopped, no one's heard about that issue in a very long time because it's gone. And, Chick-fil-A is a perfect example. Like, no one should eat at Chick-fil-A. I hear their chicken is really good, but no one should eat Chick-fil-A. This is a company that not only are they homophobic, transphobic, biphobic, they will fire you if they find out if you're LGBTQ2 plus. They have fought against legislation to allow birth control. They are very pro-life. They don't believe in a woman's right to choose. You take it, you pick it. There's so many issues there. And simply put, we should not be, no one should be going to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
But we're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
We're really freaking lazy. And so we think, oh, I'm just one person. I'm just gonna go to Chick-fil-A because I really want their chicken, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone does it. And so we end up where we are. And we have to fight against that. It is hard, I get it. But I don't go and give money to companies that are anti-LGBTQ+, whether I'm impacted or not. Because if they're willing to donate money to a politician that is anti-LGBTQ+, what else are they willing to do? We have to stand by our values. And the right side of the house, and not to get political, but I'm talking about like evangelical Christian type right, they're more than willing to die on this hill.
And get angry.
And get angry.
And get
and
visibly angry.
And fight.
Yes. So I think you nailed it in that sense of like allyship. When we talk about the context of anger, is this laziness piece comes in. So my quest for those in attendance of this workshop or catching the recording is to get curious about your anger around issues, right? Like, is it just the fact that, you know, I'll use my son's example, but is it just the fact that my son was in danger, or is it the fact that the organization doesn't have anything in place yet? Like, get curious about where this anger can go, because the anger doesn't just have to spin out inside you and make you snap at the grocery store clerk. That's not the kind of anger that I'm talking about when I talk about allyship. Exactly. It's a constructive anger, if you will, and pointed at situations, policies, practices, habits, whatever it may be, that can actually create structural change and reduce harm. So, and this is like inside the workshop, we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about pattern interruption, we're talking about de-escalation. So true solution kind of things that allies can step into to take into that, an action role inside of that. Because I think one of the roadblocks is laziness.
I agree.
You know? And it's a fear of anger. It's a fear at the topmost of things, but it's a fear of anger because, I mean, how easy, I mean, and I'm not saying, I don't want to be ableist about this. If you grew up in a violent atmosphere, tapping into your anger is going to be very triggering for you. So it's not in that sort of context that I'm saying, but to get curious about what, in a situation, what's the anger and how can you point it towards something productive instead of stepping away from the anger and allowing that river to just float past you and more harm to be done on the back end.
Yeah, I think that is, you mentioned something that really hits for me. Like my anger is what drives me to do what I do. It's seeing those injustices in the world that I find personally offensive. And so I get up and do something. Like a few weeks ago, there were a whole bunch of protests regarding drag queen story hour at libraries across the US and Canada.
Yes.
And these white nationalist groups are protesting at libraries. They are death threats are being received by the drag queens. They're spreading all sorts of hate and misinformation, lies on social media. And I saw that, and that anger has inspired me to work on a project around Drag Queen Appreciation Day. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. And
that anger is what inspired me to it, because I saw a group of people trying to educate kids on inclusion, and I saw a group of people trying to fight against it. Yeah. And that made me angry. Yeah. So I'm not yelling at the store clerk. I don't take my anger out on other people. I use that as the energy, the fuel to drive me towards change.
Amazing. And that is like, and this, what just came through to me right there is a sense of being like, I'm speaking directly to allies now, is this sense of like, it can't just be us who are putting things into motion. This workshop exists because I got angry about what happened to my son, right?
Sure.
So I turned that into a love, and I turned that into all the work it's taking me to put on this free workshop to call allies into the conversation. Same thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like if I, for allies who are sitting there taking notes, write down where can my anger take me? What project can I start? What project can I look for to join? Right. You don't always have to be reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Does the drag queen story resonate with you? Connect with Michael and see if there's something you can do to amplify whatever project it is Michael's working on when he launches it. These sorts of things is the direction and the drive that takes the pressure off of those of us who are standing at the front constantly pushing, and allows you to get involved, roll those sleeves up, get uncomfortable, your palms are sweating along beside us, and you're moving things forward. That's
absolutely.
That's change. That's transformative change.
That's
right
change.
there.
Absolutely.
So, super punchy interview, Michael. Thank you for being here. I have one final question for you. Before we do, I want to share your book.
What? This was my book?
Yes, y'all. This was a book. If you are doing the work of DEI facilitation, I highly recommend this book. If you are a business owner or a team member, and you are, like even if you're on an ERG, an employee resource group kind of thing, this book is a game changer for really understanding how, I want to say, to simplify the process, because you don't get all like, like,
it's
what do you call
fancy.
it? Yeah, it's because it doesn't need to be fancy. It's totally not complicated. So you've got another book, Alphabet Soup. We're going to give that away at some point throughout the workshop. Tell us about Alphabet Soup.
Alphabet Soup, the Essential Guide to LGBTQ2+ Inclusion, came out March 29th. My brand new book. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bit of a what and then the how. So the first couple sections are things like, what do the words mean? What's the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression? And then what do things like demi-gender mean? So a bunch of terminology. And then it's a whole like how to. So how to focus on talent attraction, on retention, on marketing, specifically through the lens of LGBTQ2+ peoples.
Amazing. Yes. So at some point throughout the workshop, we're going to give that book away, Alphabet Soup, 1,000,000,000%. My one final question for you, Michael, is I'm asking all of our speakers this. One takeaway. If there was one thing that you would leave allies with, one message for them, what would it be?
Get involved. Get involved. Do something. You don't have to be like me, who lives and breathes this every day, every hour. But just think, if every one of the people who read my article shared it, and they had a similar read, and those people shared that and shared it and shared it and shared it, then this beautiful web of inclusion would spread out across the internet. And I describe things like homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia like fire. Fire needs oxygen. If it doesn't have oxygen, it ceases to exist.
Yep.
We need to take the oxygen out of that conversation. We need to really start to take back the narrative. And the only way we do that is everybody who thinks that they're an ally, everybody can hear the sound of my voice right now, does something.
Yes. I love it. Thank you for that. It made me think of fire and a fire hose. And a fire hose is kind of violent. That water is coming out pretty angry, but that's what it takes to put out a fire. And that's, I think, a similar narrative to this. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. This has been super fabulous. Y'all have links to Michael all over the place, and you'll just go find, share, follow, do the work. Big love, big love. Thanks, friend.
Thanks, Nadi.